Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Ask Me Bridge. I am so glad you came. We're going to talk this week about bullying, and it's not just a childhood recess problem. Those of us who are on the spectrum can experience it as young as 4 years old in preschool and as late as currently as adults. So it's not something we can grow out of, and there are different reasons why bullying may take place in our house and in our home and in our environment at work or school. So today, my guest, Cindy Payne, and I are going to discuss all the different reasons why bullying may become a problem and how to recover, how to find some of the special ways that we can unleash that bullying with the person that is causing it. Maybe there's something we can learn. But before I go there, with all the awesome Aspies that are out in the world, and autistic level 1 and 2, they're out in the world telling you where the traits of autism are, such as Paul Micallef in Australia, Ryan Kelly in Australia, Samantha Stein in the Netherlands, Sarah Hendricks in the UK, Temple Grandin here in the US, and so many more that are telling you what the traits of autism are. I've decided the mission of the Ashby Bridge should be more about bringing you the resources that you never received, the information, the zone of expertise from all my guests, so that they can help you go back into society by crossing the bridge and finding and using the tools that you receive on this podcast to be more successful in life. Now, we're not fixing you. We're helping you fix a problem that you experience. A big difference there. We don't think that there's anything wrong with you. We know there's not anything wrong with you, but we do want to help you to make life flow a little bit easier. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Cindy Payne, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself and why she came to the Ashby Bridge this week. Hello, Cindy. How are you?
Hi, Suzanne. I'm great. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about why bullying is so important to you and why we need to fix the problem for all children, for all adults?
When I started to go to school, I was interested in a lot of the toys that the boys were playing with, and they didn't want to share with a girl. And then as I went through school, I experienced similar events when I tried to play Dungeons and Dragons with a group of boys, even though they said it was open to everyone. And in the computer lab, when we first got computers, and I was interested in playing around with them, and I was the only girl in there. And they tried to drive me out, and I didn't really have the resources when I was a kid to be able to handle it the way I would have liked to. So, well, hopefully this, what do you call it? This version, this recording.
The podcast? Yeah.
Episode, I guess, is the word that we want.
Oh,
Maybe
right.
this
Yes.
can shed some light on different ways that we can handle that.
That's right. Now, I heard that you're an author of a very special kind of book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I wrote a coloring book that tells a story about a character named Danny. And Danny has a dream about being at the zoo, but instead of walking around looking at all the animals in their cages, Danny's in a cage, and all the animals are coming around and looking at Danny and pointing out the differences. And at the end of the story, Danny wakes up and is upset because it didn't feel good to be made to feel so different. And Danny's mother comes in to comfort Danny and points out that the animals never really got to know Danny. And if they had, then what would have happened? And Danny realizes, oh, well, they would have found out how much there is to love about me.
Exactly. Which points toward the fact that we really want to know that we have a support system we can depend on so that when we come across these pains, that we know we have a safe landing spot. And sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't always. So that can make bullying a little bit more challenging, wouldn't you say? If there isn't a safe spot to come to feel the relief of feeling different, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. If you have somebody that you can confide in and they can remind you that just because you're different doesn't make you bad or wrong or broken, or doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means that you're human.
Exactly. And that may be someone in the family. It may be a special teacher. If you're a young child, it may be, I remember, let me just break in and say, I used to have an art teacher that when I was at school, I could tell him anything. His name was Mr. Yarjan. And for some reason, I felt very comfortable telling him, or the guidance counselor. The guidance counselor is a great person to go to if you feel comfortable. But the key is to find someone comfortable. Do you have anyone who was comfortable at your young age that you could go to?
Unfortunately, I didn't have the experience that you did. I didn't really have anybody to go to.
Because that could make it compounded challenging because not only are you feeling different, but you're not feeling that resolve that you'd like to feel. If you were that young child today, what do you think you might say to them to make them feel better?
Well, if I could speak to my younger versions, I would reassure them that just because other people don't accept them for who they are, it doesn't make them any less wonderful and amazing and lovable and special. We all are. We all have qualities that are unique and make us who we are.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And sometimes we do have to talk to our younger selves because someone may not be either understanding of why it was bothering us. I know I've been told too many times you're being too sensitive. They didn't mean anything by it. But I think that that's a hard road to take with children. Just to cast it off with the gaslight, like you're being too sensitive. I think we need to find that special person, hopefully, if not within ourselves immediately, who we can just get that hug from or that pat on the back saying, you know what, you are better than this. Now let's just go back to your boys. Do you think that there was a competition? They felt that perhaps you might be better than them.
There very well could have been a fear that they would be outdone by a girl, and then what would that say about them?
That is true. So often, what we don't realize as children is so many times that the person who is the bully is actually more insecure about themselves and their abilities, and therefore they're trying to find that victim that they can place down so that they can feel better about themselves. It's rarely the person who feels confident in who they are that will bully someone else. Now, that's in the school, at the school ages. For me, I was different. I acted funny and I had a very high voice. I almost squeaked. They called me Mouse when I was in school. And I still have a highish voice. I've gotten used to it now, of course, because I would not have done these podcasts. But my point is that sometimes we have to push away as hard as it is and realize in our minds, oh, maybe they have the challenge that they need to make us feel less than in order for them to feel better. Now, a young child may not understand that. That's why an adult that they can talk to is important. But this can happen also in work situations. And I'm sure you were telling me earlier that you've noticed some work bullying. Can you explain that for us, Cindy?
Well, I think it's what you were just talking about, people feeling insecure. A lot of times it can be somebody who's a manager and maybe has imposter syndrome or is feeling threatened by someone who reports to them and their skills and their talents, and they're afraid that somehow that person's going to point out that they don't know as much as they think they know, or
Oh
they're not
boy.
as talented as some of the people that report to them, or
Yes.
they don't want to be told that they're wrong. So you'll just do it my way. Don't question me. Just do as I say, to sort of create a shield to prevent them from looking bad to others.
Oh, yes. And this does happen in the workplace. And let me tell you how it happens. Is we know that there are a bunch of different leaders out there, managers and all different supervisors out there, and everybody has their way of doing things. So what sometimes happens is when you get trained on a job, it's an interpretation of how the job should be done. And I had this girl that I used to work with called Riley, and she would say, no, 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 you're doing it wrong. Well, this was her way of exerting power. And that's a lot of times what happens is her way of exerting power to tell me I was doing it wrong because I wasn't doing it the Riley way. So sometimes we need to go to a safe supervisor and say, please show me the correct way to do this, because every so often I get told I'm doing it incorrectly when I was trained to do it this way. And it went down in my job as, oh, that's the Riley way of doing things. And now you knew that, okay, well, if it's not completely wrong, I'll do it Riley's way when she's doing it. That was my way of recovering. Was like, okay, who's the supervisor? I'll bend to make Riley feel more comfortable by doing it her way. That's not necessarily always the best way to do it if you know it's wrong. But you can take her interpretation to a way that she feels like she's getting validated without you feeling invalidated at the same time. But it was a cute story. I didn't necessarily handle it correctly, and I get mad. And that's not the way to do it. The best way to do it is to seek out a supervisor or another leader who can say, you were doing it right. That is an interpretation on how it was done. But Riley wanted to exert power, and that's one thing that bullies do, is they want to exert their power. And right or wrong, if you don't do it their way, they're going to get angry. And as Cindy said, act like an imposter, perhaps. And that's not the best way to do it. What about in a family situation? Do you think there are any bullies in a family situation? I know I have seen it, but what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's, I think, a myth that bullying only happens outside of the household. Uh, and it doesn't have to be necessarily in your core family. It could be aunts, uncles, cousins, people you don't see often, but sometimes even siblings bully one another.
Yes, they do, don't they? That would be a competition issue, wouldn't you think? That's again a competition issue of
Absolutely.
being mom's favorite.
Or I have to be better than this than you are. If I'm not better, then I'm not a better person.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's I know that in some cases that I was in, it was a way of getting me to perform differently, to manage things differently, to do something differently, because they weren't comfortable. Again, bringing up the idea that I'm not secure or I'm not happy with the way you're doing it, so you need to change. When in fact, you probably were doing it fine, but it was their discomfort, again, their insecurity, that was leading them to want to bully you, whether it is a sibling or a parent or an aunt or uncle saying, no, you can't do it that way, when it's more discomfort. Can you think of any stories of where you might have experienced a discomfort from another person that they bullied you into changing the way you did something?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Nothing really comes to mind, but it did occur to me when you were talking about Riley and doing it wrong. But there's a difference between performing incorrectly. So for example, if the instructions are there's a bag, put the burger in the bag, put the fries in the bag, and then put the napkin on top and any condiments. If you're doing that wrong, and that's the way that you were told to do it, then yeah, there's room for correction. But if the way that you're doing it wrong is a matter of your personal expression, then I think that really needs to be taken into account. Like maybe Riley was more businesslike in her approach, and maybe you were more friendly and more welcoming, and you wanted to put a personal flair in, and you wanted to make people feel welcome, and you wanted to make people feel good, and that's not her way, so you're doing it wrong. I think it's just a difference of the way that we all express ourselves.
Oh, what a great way to segue into recovery from bullying. And that is learning how people express themselves and making it okay that it's different. And now this may not be in the workplace because there are systems in place, and perhaps the manager wanted it done Riley's way, or maybe it's more in learning on what makes you you and what makes me me. Where is the common interest, and where can we learn from each other? I think that's a great way. I love the effect, the word expression, and learning about each other. How do you think that you could help the boys way back then learn that they had one way, but you might have a different way that they might like?
Exactly, yes. I mean, we all do things differently. And back when I was in the computer lab, it was about coding. And there isn't really ever one single right way to write code. It's a very individualized. So if they had been more open and more welcoming, we could have shared the different ways that we did the coding. And I might have learned some things that they did that I liked and wanted to integrate into the way that I did it. And they might have learned something from me as well. I think that we can all really learn and grow if we stay curious about what is it that makes you choose that method of coding or write those lines in that particular order. How can I find out if I compare yours to mine, how I can enhance mine by knowing how you do it?
It might lead to some compliments. It might
It
lead to some ways of saying, oh, that's a great idea. Now we're taking gender right out of it and saying, I hadn't thought about that perspective before. Well, now children aren't going to say big words like perspective or things like that or perception, but they may say, wow, how did you make your rocket do that? Haven't learned how to do that yet. Or how did you make this code go in this order? Oh my gosh, I remember back to doing codes and all I knew how to do was send the rocket ship off. But I was so impressed by the fact that you dug deeper into learning it. And while the boys might have been uncomfortable, they could have learned a different mindset, a cool new way of doing things that they hadn't even thought of. So I like that curiosity. Now, can you think of something you learned from them that made it more fun for you to be in there?
Unfortunately, no, I didn't learn anything from them because they basically wanted me to leave and tried to make it as uncomfortable for me to be there as they possibly could. But I really like what you said about, you know, learning from one another, resulting in a different mindset. And I think there's a mindset where you're really open to seeing the differences in other people and what you might gain from them, and all the different possibilities that could open up as a result of having a conversation with someone about ways in which they seem different to you, instead of just saying, oh, well, she's different, so I don't want to have anything to do with her.
Mm. Yes, it takes it from a black and white, right and wrong, to some gray. Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. And that goes from the childhood all the way up to current time. Oh, you know what? I do like the way you did that because now my fries won't get all over the place. Or in the case of the coffee, oh, you know what? Maybe putting the grounds, the coffee grounds in at this point instead of then, the coffee will taste more full flavored. Oh, now you're now getting to understand someone else's mindset. They're learning their sequence of what makes a secret. Maybe you didn't realize that there was a special order. Maybe you didn't realize that there was room for interpretation. It's not all black and white. And I like that, is getting to know that there's more than one way of doing things, and we're not so different if we do it a different way.
Not to mention that, but we don't all have the same knowledge base. You know more about some things than I do, and vice versa. So you might know something about making coffee that I don't know. And does
Very
it
true.
things better for me if I'm open to finding out what you know that I don't know, and vice versa?
Yes, I think that could alleviate a lot of bullying. Now, that's not to say that you need to stay uncomfortable in a place. There may be other groups of girls that like to do the same kind of activities. Sometimes we have to go with where the interest is. Sometimes we can go with meet up with a new group. Knowing your own self comfort is a big part of knowing where you feel you belong. And now maybe Cindy didn't have any other girls that were into coding. That meant that she had to make a choice. Do I like coding more than I like not doing it? Or would I prefer to find a girl activity where I feel more comfortable? Now, we were talking earlier about she likes to do some kind of drawing. I like to do more of a stitchery. We can learn from each other. What do you say about that, Cindy?
Oh, absolutely. I get really curious about, okay, I've never done cross stitch. What is it that appeals to you about that? And is there something about it that might appeal to me? Or learning about maybe some things that we have in common. Maybe there's something about the patterns that you appreciate that I could appreciate, but never thought about it. So I'm never open to that idea. And just getting to learn to know what it is that people like about certain things that they do can open up whole new worlds that we didn't even know existed. If we dismiss
Definitely friendships.
because, oh, well, cross stitch, I've never done that, I don't want to know you, then what have I just closed myself off to?
Very true. Sometimes there are friendships that are out there that you can create a new friendship just by getting to know someone else's passion. Okay, well, I've never tried that before. Or maybe someone who is a bully, you later discover that they like to cook like you do. I mean, sometimes we need to dig deeper into who a person is and separate the behavior from the person. Maybe there are times that in in the computer lab, they're going to act this way, but maybe you have another interest that's common. You need to say, okay, that's the way he is in that situation, but maybe I can find another way where we can come together. Now, you can't obviously go up and say, so other than computer, what else do you like? You have to kind of observe, what else does this person do that I might like doing? What else about this person might I find interesting that I can learn more about? Sometimes we don't realize it. They may be one way in the computer lab, but they may hate frogs as much as you do in the science room. Or they might love to really create new designs in the art room. Sometimes we need to dig deeper about a person and learn what their other interests are. Sometimes there are people that you just are not going to find the same interest at all. That's okay. You don't have to like everybody, and they don't have to like you. And we can be okay with that. Have you ever found someone where you didn't like them in one part of their life, but another part they were kind of cool?
Yes, actually, there have been a few people that I've run into that in one circumstance, they're really not a very nice person, but in another, oh, you like that too? Oh, okay, so we do have that in common, even though you're not very nice when we're in that class together. And I really love what you said about we're not going to like everybody and not everybody's going to like us, and being okay with that. I think it's really unrealistic to expect that everybody's going to love you. And I don't know where that comes from, that sort of expectation, that pressure. I think a lot of my friends have mentioned that they felt like when they were in school, they wanted to be the popular one and they didn't have many friends.
Mm-hmm. I
We're not,
think in some families, the adage is we're all family. We have to love each other because we're all family. And maybe that goes out into the world of, well, my if I had to love everybody in my family, maybe I should make it such that everybody loves me out there. But oftentimes that's not the best way to be, because that means that you become a people pleaser just to be someone else, just to get everybody to like you. You need to be authentic. You need to be who you are. There's no reason why you should try and go and be friends with everybody. That's not realistic.
no, it certainly isn't. And I just love the way that you stressed that it's okay if there are people you don't like, and it's okay if there are people that don't like you, because there will be other people that you do like and other people that do like you.
Yeah. I think, as you said, if we try too hard to be people pleasers, to blend in, to act like others just so we can get the popularity vote, and I think we're doing a big disservice, especially to the bully. Oh yeah, I'll do it your way. Now who are you being? You're not being yourself. Just to say, oh yeah, I'll do it your way, you have to say, you know what? I'm not talking to you about this right now because I can see that we don't agree, and that's okay. Maybe we'll find something else that we have in common. But if we don't, that's okay too. But I don't think we need to figure it out now. I don't think we need to find something. It will come about if it's meant to be. If it's meant to be. But in the meantime, it is up to us to say, okay, that person may have challenges in this particular arena. I'm going to go to this group where I feel welcomed. And while the bully may think that they have won, they haven't won, because you're not sticking around being vulnerable, trying to fit in. If you stay there and say, I'll show them, you're just going to get more uncomfortable. But if you say, okay, I understand where you stand, I'm going to go find another place. Please let me be, and I'll let you be, and I'm going to go find another group. That is one way to walk away with your head up in pride, saying, we don't have to agree. We can find the right group for us. Have you ever found that you went, Cindy, to a different group and found joy when you couldn't? And I'm not talking about school, but any situation where you're like, okay, I gotta leave that group beside to keep my pride. I'm gonna go to another group instead.
Well, there was a time when I was in an organization that would practice public speaking. And it wasn't a bullying situation. It was just a situation that didn't really fit me. I wasn't getting what I wanted or needed out of it. And so there was another group not too far away, and I went and tried to just to see how they did things. And I found that they did things in a way that was a lot more compatible with what my vision was for growing within the organization. So I think you make a really good point about trying to evaluate whether or not you're comfortable in a situation and whether it's worth looking somewhere else, or if you don't really care if somebody's being a jerk, you can just ignore them and say, I really love this and I'm going to be here and I don't care how you behave. And I loved what you said about just refusing to have the conversation at that moment. Because I think
Yeah,
sometimes we forget we can say no and walk away.
that's a big part of it, isn't it? Is saying, I respect your ideas. I respect your values. My value is not to push my way in, or as you said, you know, I'm not going to let your behavior threaten my happiness with doing this activity. It's not a me problem that I'm here. It's not a me problem that you don't agree with me. I'm happy with what I'm doing. So it comes down to our core values, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, and I love the way that you're proposing we consider, is this a me problem or is this a someone else problem? Because I think kids, in a lot of cases, because they want to be accepted, make it their problem that somebody's not happy that they're trying to do what they're trying to do. Like the guys that didn't want me in the computer lab, was that a me problem? No, it was a them problem.
Yeah.
From their perspective, was it a me problem? Yes, it was. But they weren't interested in addressing that.
No. No, I think back to your story about Danny and some of the different animals saying, but you don't have this. Was that a problem for Danny that you didn't have a hump like a camel? Or, I
Exactly.
mean, it comes down to Danny realizing that it's okay that she didn't have some of the features. But Danny learned that she was good exactly the way she was. And that's why I love to see children come to realize is they don't have to have long blonde hair like Susie, or they don't have to jump rope as well as Peter, or they don't have to be the best football player like another guy. I mean, it comes down to them knowing who they are.
Yeah,
And
and being the best me I can be.
exactly, exactly. Knowing when to stay because it's what you love. And I'm not saying you have to forgive. That's a lot to ask a child, but to accept maybe accept, okay, they're not happy with me being here, but I'm happy. Or I choose not to be part of this. I'm going somewhere else. I think bullying comes down to the fact of knowing where we want to belong. Not where they want us to belong, but where we want to belong. What else can you add to this conversation, Cindy, that we haven't spoken about yet?
Well, when you were saying that, it brought to mind this gentleman that I met, a really lovely guy, and he had a daughter, and she was very short. And she was also born on the shortest day of the year. And she came to him one day and said, you know, Dad, the kids at school are all picking on me because I'm so short. And he said, well, just tell them I was born on the shortest day of the year. What do you expect? And I loved that suggestion, because when we allow people who are trying to manipulate us or force us to go away, or they're trying to make us feel bad about who we are or what we are or how we look, if they see that it doesn't get under our skin, they'll stop trying.
Very true. Very true. You know what? I love that. And I also like the idea that we can throw a little humor in, and that kind of takes them off their step. Oh, now they're laughing with you instead of laughing at you. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I wonder what if I could have done if I had just said squeak, 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 squeak instead of running to the bathroom because I felt hurt. Now, that's not to say that we're going to give in to the person. And we do have to think about our responses and our reactions and what kind of person we're responding to. In the case of her, what kind of response did she get from that story?
Both, I never laughed at how short she was again. It didn't bother her. So what's the point of making fun of her if you don't get a response as the bully? It kind of takes all of the fun out of it, or whatever you get out of it if it's not fun. You know, there's that saying, hurt people hurt people. So, you know, if that's the way that you get your power, is by picking on other people, and you discover that that short girl isn't going to start crying, she's just going to say, well, what do you expect? I was born on the shortest day of the year. Okay, I can't get any power out of her. I'll leave her alone and find somebody else to pick on.
That's it. That's it. Well, everyone, that takes us full circle back to knowing that there are going to be some that are feeling insecure in their own hearts and their own minds, that they're not as good as they perceive everybody else to be. And they're going to say, well, how can I get better? Is by taking someone that they feel is more vulnerable than them and making fun of them. And while it will hurt, you have a choice. You can react to it and get upset, and then they will, as Cindy said, they may continue to make fun, or you can just stand proud and say, you know what, this isn't the right place for me. I'm going to go find another group. And if they really continue, you do have to seek out some extra support to just let them know what's going on. Because when you team up with other people who have your back, I'm sure that they'll be watching out to see when there may be other occasions that you feel intimidated or manipulated or overpowered by what is going on, and they are going to be there for you. I have my bridge builders here for a reason, and they have their eyes out in society to say, we're going to keep our eyes open and make sure that you aren't going to get bullied. You're not going to be manipulated or intimidated because you deserve more. And as a person who feels like they're being in that position, team up with others who believe in you so that you can regain your belief in yourself if you don't already have it. So I want to say thank you for coming today to our bullying. This is a very important topic that happens from very young to rather old. I mean, it's not an age related problem. It can happen at all points of our life. And is there anything else you can add to that, Cindy, that you'd like everybody to know before we close up our podcast for today?
Yeah, well, you make a good point. It can happen at any time in your life, and that's why I think it's so important, no matter how old you are, that you have somebody, at least one person, that you can go to for support who might be able to give you a different perspective and help you to, you know, come back at the situation from a different approach.
They'll give you a different approach and perhaps a different perspective. As long as you don't let that person who you believe is your safe zone also gaslight you, then you may need to evaluate who they are in your life as well. But if you can come back and someone says, you know what they say is their problem, what you feel is right, and you're a good person, then I think you're going to be able to move on. It's not going to be an overnight fix, but if you can rebuild your confidence in who you are and realize your core value is that you're going to be the best person you can be, as Cindy said, that's the best you can do. You're not going to make everybody happy. But you also don't have to take everybody's problems on. So I want to say thank you to everyone for coming this week. I hope you gained something from this lesson on bullying. And I hope to see you next week on the Ask Be Rich. Have a great day.